From time to time, an image is just so striking it stops you in your tracks, and that was the experience of everyone in the checkpoint office today as one by one we marvelled at pictures of massive icebergs drifting by a Newfoundland town called Fairyland. One in particular is so close to the shore that it looks incongruous, like a neighbour. It happens at this time every year, ask the people on the Titanic. But this year they're so close and so striking that we called Charlie Dunn, the owner of Dunn's B&B in Fairyland, to ask him to describe the view out of his window. And Charlie, as it turns out, was a pretty excellent guy to call.
They're actually massive, massive pieces of ice, and the ordinary person really can't comprehend exactly how big they are. These are actually, some of them, millions of tons. There was one iceberg, and this is about, I'm going to estimate about 7 or 8 years ago, that broke off, and it was actually 60 square miles. That's how big this iceberg was. It was 5 years drifting south. So these are actually massive, massive pieces of ice. And if you can imagine, the one that's here in front of our bed and breakfast for the past 2 weeks, we went out in a boat. Now, we don't go close to the iceberg because pieces can break off, and where they're so massive, you only go to within a certain distance of the iceberg. But the water where we were to was 330 feet deep. So that iceberg was 330 feet. That was grounded. It was on the bottom of the ocean, 330 feet. And there was roughly about 100 to 150 feet sticking out of the water. So that's how big it is. And you can imagine that it was an iceberg similar to this that sank the Titanic 105 years ago.
And I didn't realise until Michelle, our producer, gave me the notes that the Titanic went down about 600k off your coastline there.
The Titanic went down off the coast of Newfoundland, about 600 miles south of Newfoundland, and that was 105 years ago, on the 14th of April, 1912. And here in Newfoundland, we have a lighthouse, which is called Cape Race Lighthouse, and that was the lighthouse that received the wireless message from the Titanic the night that it sank.
Right, so it was one of these icebergs that happens at this time every year, and at the moment, the one that everyone is absolutely besotted with because it's just off from your B&B, is it?
Well, it's just off from the B&B. We're living right on the ocean here. We're living in that. I look out, and of course, I'm looking at a lighthouse that's just out from the bed and breakfast, and we're in this little harbour here. So just out from the harbour, that's where this iceberg is to. That's as far as it could get into the harbour. And the reason that it's causing so much excitement here is because it's the only one that's close to shore right now, and it's an odd shape. We have right now the Department of Transportation in Canada are estimating that there is between 400 and 500 icebergs that are drifting south that are actually out into the shipping lanes. So these large ships and container ships that are coming and going from Canada, the United States to Europe, they actually have to alter their course because you've got those icebergs that are out in the shipping lanes.
Charlie, I'm loving talking to you, and I want to go. You make me want to go to Fairyland. What's it like?
Come. We got a bed and breakfast.
I'd love to come. What's it like, your little town? How many people live there?
Right now, there's ice with an estimate about maybe between 400 and 500 people. We're living about 75 kilometers south of the oldest city in North America, which is St. John's. The whole population of our tiny island of Newfoundland is about 525,000 people. And
what do you do? So you run a B&B. You do a bit of crayfishing, do you?
I run a B&B, and I'm a crab fisherman. I fish for snow crab.
Can you describe what's the best way of cooking them?
The best way of cooking them is just steam them. You only put them in, of course, it's a terrible thing to say, but you put them in like you would with a lobster. They're live when you put them in, and just add like a drop of water, a small drop of water, a little bit of salt, and they're mostly steamed. That's the way we cook them here. And basically, we try to cook them with salt water as well, if you can do that.
Oh, and one final question before you go, and I hope you don't think I'm being rude here, but your accent is beautiful. And were you originally Irish? I know you've been there for a long time, or is that the Newfoundland accent?
Newfoundland, actually, we're living where, if you left St. John's, and the area that we live in is called the Irish Loop.
Right.
It's called the Irish Loop because about 95 to 96, 97% of all our ancestors here are a mix of English and Irish.
Well, I can't recall the last time I learned so much from a single interview, Charlie. How to cook crab, what the icebergs are up to, and the geographical makeup of your beautiful part of the world, and sociological and anthropological. But bloody hell, Charlie, you should be on Radio New Zealand more often.
Well, you know something, it was an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I hope that, that your listeners will get something from this conversation, and feel free at any time to call, or by all means, come to Newfoundland. We'd love to see you.
Charlie Dunn, what a delight.